We are here for lovenotes.com, and we're here with Kearnie Warren. And I said that name right?
You did, yes.
Okay,
did.
all right, I appreciate that. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to say your name correctly, and I want you to say what you are all about, if you can. Thank you.
I am Kearnie Nichelle Warren. I am the founder of the Caregiver Society. I am the author of Caregiving for a Warrior, My Life with My Mother, Reverend Bernice Warren, and soon to come, co-author of the book Successfully Broken.
Ah, beautiful. What is it about your life with your mother that makes you inspired to write a book about it?
Well, I've been a caregiver off and on for a very long time, and my mother was diagnosed with cancer in 2017, and so the struggle of her cancer journey, her and I together, inspired me to write this book. There were words that she said to me about a month before she passed away that just stuck with me, and those words were, Kearnie, people will talk about our love story forever. And I didn't know what she meant at the time, but those words just kept ringing in my head after she passed away. And I had always wanted to write a book. And even at the beginning of her diagnosis, I told her, I said, you know, I'm going to write a book about this journey. But I didn't know how it was going to end. And so, you know, it ended with her transitioning. But those words, people will talk about our love story forever, really is the reason why I decided to write the book.
Wow, that's pretty compelling. What made you decide to get into the caretaking industry?
So I've been a caregiver for family members off and on for over 10 years. And it started with my grandfather and my grandparents and my mother. And so because of that, I understand what a caregiver goes through. Particularly right now, there are approximately 43.5 million unpaid caregivers in the United States, and those people are the ones who are not doing it by or for their profession. These are people who are caring for their loved ones or friends and family. And so because of that, there's a different type of exhaustion and stress level that comes when you're caring for a family member and you're not necessarily getting paid to do it, but you're doing it because you have a heart. There's a drive that makes you want to care after a loved one. It's a 24/7 job and it never turns off. So I decided to create an organization to cater to the needs, the specific needs of caregivers, those who are caregiving for the terminally ill, the temporarily ill, people living with Alzheimer's, children with special needs or adults with special needs, among other illnesses or ailments that people may have. So I provide, or my community provides, emotional, physical, and spiritual support for the caregiver.
Beautiful. Great. What would be some of the specific examples that you can give for caregiving that you think are worthy to mention?
As far as
anything, like some of the things that you had to go through, struggles, things that people might want to know about.
Sure. So I would say that one major characteristic of caregiving, particularly for a family member, would be anxiety. When you are a caregiver, it's a 24/7 job, and you don't always get a chance to travel or to leave the house unless it's for shopping, you know, groceries, but not for fun. And if you do have to leave or go away, or if you get the chance to do so, you have anxiety. You feel as though no one else can care for your loved one or family member the way that you can. And for me, it was actually truthful between my mother and my grandmother when I would have to go out of town for work, because at a point before I stopped working with the both of them, I was still trying to work outside of the home until I had to just quit working altogether. But there were 2 instances where I had to go out of town and leave my grandmother and my mother with other family members or other people who were going to care for them while I was gone. And it just you know, the phone calls start coming in, confusion with medication, or just confusion about a lot of things. And so you have this anxiety that you shouldn't leave, you left, and now everything is just becoming a mess while you're gone, and you can't get to your loved one. So anxiety, I would say, is a big portion of caregiving, along with other aspects. I mean, you're watching, and again, this is for unpaid caregivers, those who are caring for family and friends. You're watching your loved one change right before your eyes, and there's nothing that you can do about it. So you have the stress of watching your loved one change physically, mentally sometimes, and you can't do anything about it. And sometimes you are exhausted, you're tired. And I can recall a time where I was just so tired. At one point, my grandmother required 24/7 care. And I was the main caregiver. And so though I had help, I was the one that was always there. And she needed to be turned every 2 to 4 hours. And so you're talking about every day, all day, needing care. And one time I was just so exhausted and I felt bad. So you have guilt that also comes along with that. And I confided in a friend, and the friend told me, it's okay to get tired. You know, mothers get tired, Kearnie. And so before hearing those words, I felt like a horrible caregiver. I felt so much guilt. You know, how dare I get tired when my loved one is struggling to live. But it is something that you have to deal with, exhaustion. And you have to be honest with yourself and with others when you need support. And you have to tell people the type of support that you need. A lot of times people don't know, and they say, oh, you know, can I take you out? Do you want to go on a trip? Do you want to do this? And honestly, you can't leave. And so you say no, you can't do it, but you need to say, you know what? I can't do it. Why don't you come over here and sit with me? You know, or whatever it is that you can, that you're able to do. You need to be honest and tell people and your support system.
So this has impacted you as well, I mean, in terms of your own social life. Is that correct?
Oh, exactly. I can remember when I was a young woman, when I first became a caregiver for my grandfather, and this is before caregiving was even thought of as a profession for those who are taking care of family members, before you could even get paid by the state to do it. And I was living in Arizona at the time, and I had to come home. I was 25, young woman. You know, when my friends were traveling and shopping and doing all these things, I had a grandfather and a grandmother that I had to take care of. You know, my grandfather, you know, grocery shopping, shaving him, dressing him, taking him back and forth to the doctors. I would do it all again because I loved my grandfather. But as a young woman, it was very difficult for me to juggle young womanhood, wanting to go out and have fun, keeping a job outside of the household to pay my bills. You know, I was so depressed at one time, I would call my job and say, I just cannot get out of the bed. Like, I just can't get out of bed. And I didn't understand why. And, you know, I'm sure other people around me probably thought that I was just being lazy or something, but it was emotionally draining. I can remember one time a friend of mine had a birthday party in DC, and I spent so much time trying to make sure that my grandmother and my grandfather were taken care of that I got in a car. I was just in like sweats, and I had to go down to DC. Everyone was at the party. I had to shower at her house, wash my hair, get dressed down there, because it's like taking care of children. In a sense, not that they are children, but it's the responsibility portion of it that you have to make sure that everything is taken care of before you can leave out.
Beautiful. I'm going to ask this question. For those people, and I know that there are several people out there who have considered nursing home, contrast your situation with that, please.
I am not a fan, and I will be honest, I am not a fan of nursing homes. I've had my personal experience with nursing homes. Unfortunately, it wasn't my decision, but my grandfather my family moved my grandfather into a nursing home, and I knew, and I remember telling my father, he's not going to last 2 years. When people move into a nursing home, they usually last about 1 to 2 years at the tops. I mean, that's just from my experience. And so while my grandfather was in a nursing home, I would show up unannounced. And there were many times where I was threatened to have the police called on me. I would go and read my grandfather's records, and I suggest that if you have a loved one that is in a nursing home, you have to show up unannounced. They have to know that someone cares for this person, and you never know when they are going to come. You have to look through the records, because there were times where it was written down that my grandfather had fallen and we never got a phone call, or he was never taken to the hospital. I found a bed sore on his ankle. One day I was there, and I don't know what I was doing, something with his legs and ankle, and I smelled something, and I pulled his boot back, and I saw this. It was a horrible, it was infected, and I just cried, because these are loved ones. I would go into this nursing home, and I would see not just my grandfather, but I would feel sorry for the other residents there who would just be sitting in the hallway. They might have been cold or hungry, and I reported the nursing home, and an administrator and her assistant were fired. So I had a horrible experience with nursing homes, and that's why when it came to my grandmother and my mother, I decided there's no way that we are putting you in a nursing home. Before it was out of my hands, when it was time for my grandmother and my mother, my grandmother, it was myself and my mom and my aunt who took care of her. And then with my mom, it was myself and my aunt. And there was a point where my mother said to me, when I get really, really sick and weak, I want to go into a nursing home. And we would fight all the time. Like, I'm not putting you in a nursing home. And she would say, well, I want you to live your life. But there was no way. And she did not go into a nursing home. But there was no way that, from my experience, my mother was a minister. So I have been going to nursing homes since I was a child. Even when I was in junior high school, I think 2 days a week we would volunteer at a nursing home. So I've had my experiences with them. And so for my personal experience and my feelings towards them, I would never put a loved one in a nursing home. And not to say that they're all bad, but what happens is the salaries are not sustainable for a sustainable living, and the amount of ratio from patients to a nurse is off. So it's a lot that goes with the treatment and behaviors in the healthcare system in general, because I have issues with hospitals too. So you just have to be a pit bull and an advocate for yourself and a loved one.
Okay, that's beautiful put. For somebody who's about to come into the same situation as you, all right, as they say, for instance, of course, their family members are getting older, and they're going to need care. What would be your advice to them?
My advice would be to, number one, research the illness, whatever it may be. Do your research on that. The second would be to research nursing homes. Look at the grades of the nursing home. Learn what the ratio of patient to nurse or staff is. Also research the cost of hiring a private agency to come into the home. And also, based upon income for the person who needs the care, there are programs where loved ones can get paid by the state, but it's income based. So there are different ways of handling the situation when a loved one is getting older, or if they're sick, trying to figure out what the best possible move is. But when you bring the person home, you have to understand that it is a lot. It requires a lot. And I would like to say that, there's a difference between a caregiver, a person with a caregiver's heart, versus someone who is just providing care. When you are caring for a loved one, you have to have a caregiver's heart. And what I mean by that is you have to have patience. You have to have empathy. A caregiver's heart is a person with a caregiver's heart is someone who knows what that loved one patient needs without them asking. Gotcha. You know, the saying is, or my grandmother would say, once an adult, twice a child. And that's true. So, for example, there were times where if we were about to leave out the house, I would say, Mom, do you have to go to the bathroom? No. Okay, we get her all dressed in a coat. As soon as we're walking out the door, I have to go to the bathroom. Okay, fine. But someone who doesn't have as much patience would get upset at that. Like, oh, didn't I ask you before we left out if you had to go to the bathroom? So there are things that are going to occur that are out of that person's hands because of whatever their illness is, or just from getting older. You know, people forget things. Their mental is changing. So you have to really be prepared to take on the caregiving aspect of helping a loved one, and you have to have a strong support system because there's a lot of burnout. And I am so thankful for the support system with my mother. She had wonderful friends and family and colleagues who helped me cope with her illness, because I was her only child. So that's another level to caring for someone who was so powerful and mighty, and now, you know, trying to maintain that her dignity and her being that authority figure over me, but me also, now the role is changing. You know, I have to be her pit bull at the doctor's appointment. So you just have to do a lot of research, become your own advocate, and take a lot of notes. Beautiful.
So the books that you, well, actually have one written so far. You have a copy with you?
I do. Caregiving for a Warrior. Okay. And this is the book about my life with my mother. There are some photos in here of us when, you know, some photos of my mother and I. Let's see. This is her cancer journey, if I can find it. Well, you get the picture. Mm-hmm. And so, it's about our cancer journey, or I say our because I include myself with my mother. And it's about her and the lessons that she taught me growing up. And this book, for me, I say that it's very inspirational on multiple levels. It's inspirational for people who are caregivers who are going through similar situations, whether it's cancer or another type of illness. It's inspirational because my mother is the reason why I am the woman I am today. From her teachings as a little girl, she knew what type of world we lived in, and she wanted to prepare me for it and protect me from it. So as a little black girl, there were lessons that she had to teach me, and throughout my life that she taught me, that made me the person or the woman that I am today.
Beautiful. Where can people order the book?
So it's coming to Amazon soon, but for right now, you can go to www.KearnieWarren.com, and that's KearnieWarren.com for updates on events and book signings.
Beautiful. Is this are there any follow-ups to this?
Well, I am also a co-author of a book that's soon to come out called Successfully Broken, which highlights various women and through their struggles to overcoming them to becoming the success that they are today. Beautiful.
Absolutely great. Okay. We can basically wind this down, but what I want to know is if you have any words, parting shots, whatever you want to say to the world who's listening to this right now, what would you want to say?
The common thread is tenacity, and grit, and never giving up despite what is going on in your life. I am a spiritual person. I say that my success comes from my faith, and the ability to say hallelujah anyhow through whatever life throws at me. Just like many people, my life has not been perfect. Just to share without giving too much about this book, but one of the hardest life lessons or tragedies that I had to endure was waking up with my mother with her lifeless body next to me in the bed. And I had gone through a lot of things in life, watching loved ones die and sick, and just my own personal story. And when that happened, I thought, I'm over life. I'm over it. I don't want any parts of it anymore. Not that I wanted to kill myself, but I, at that point, understood what people meant when they said, I just want to be with my mom, whoever it is that passed away. I understood at that point what that meant. I just wanted to be with my mother. And I just didn't know how I was going to get over that. Prior to her death, about a month prior, I said to her, I said, you know, I don't know how I am going to live without you. And she said, she looked at me and she said, Kearnie, you have to. And because of that, that is what kept me going from that tragedy. But in general, I have just been a person that believes there's a positive lesson in everything that you experience in life. It's so easy for people to just give up when something goes wrong. That's the easy part. We can all think, you know, something wrong happens, people just give up. It's easy. But to accept what has happened to you or what you're going through, and then having the ability to maneuver through that and come out on the other side is that's the key to a successful person, and a person with a high level of emotional intelligence. So I would say that you should never give up on your dreams. You know, I wrote on my vision board in March that I wanted to author a book. This is my book that was printed and finalized, what is this, October, in September. So what is that, a little over 7 months?
Yes.
I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I did it. I am a person that just starts things and figure it out later, because I believe life is a game, and I look at it that way. I know that hardships are going to come, but how am I going to respond? Not react, but respond to them. And the way you respond to life is what you will get out of it. And if you just know that life is not perfect, it will never be perfect. You will get curveballs. Your life, you will think is going great, and you will run into a brick wall sometimes. But knowing that that could happen, and being able to sit back and assess what your part in it has been and how you're going to move forward for the things that you can change, is something that I would suggest people really follow. It's just that never give up, have that tenacity and that grit to keep going when life throws rocks at you.
Beautiful, beautiful put. And this has been a very, very compelling interview. I thank you so much for your time and effort. You've been great. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're asking, I'm sure you are, this is Kearnie Warren. And she has, did I say it right?
You did. I just wanted to say, I wanted to put out the website for the Caregiver Society.
Yes, please do.
It's the Caregiver Society, so it's www.thecaregiversociety.com, and we host various events, trips. It's a place to go for all caregivers for emotional, physical, and spiritual support.
Beautiful. And of course, they can also get information regarding your book on this as well.
Exactly.
There you go. That's a beautiful thing. And we thank you so much. This has been like really, really great. Take care now.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.